Howdy Beans, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Howdy Beans podcast. This is the beginning of something special. This is the beginning of something that I've wanted to do since I started the podcast. Ever since I started talking about Doctor Who, it's been leading up to this moment, and I'm glad finally that I can get round to doing it this year. But before we get into all of that, I want to do with housekeeping because I like to keep my house nice and clean. So make sure that you follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at howdybeans_pod. If you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And finally, if you listen to this on Spotify on your mobile phone, don't forget to leave a 5-star rating. So today we're going to be looking at Series 1 of Torchwood. I am incredibly excited. If you've been following along with my Doctor Who reviews, you knew this was coming. If you listened to my end of year wrap up for last year, then you would know that I was going to talk about this. And I'm so glad that I'm finally there. To be honest, my experience with Torchwood, I've told the story before, but for anybody who's starting here, I'll tell it again. Basically, growing up in my house, everybody had a set time to use the TV. When my dad was at work all day, when he'd come home, it was his. During certain days with the soaps and that, my mum had control of the TV. So me and my younger sister kind of had to fight each other for control of the TV. I wanted Cartoon Network. She wanted the Disney Channel. So it was one of those. It was a fight. But as I got older and I started watching things like Doctor Who, that was my time. It was like, look, that's your slot time. You watch Doctor Who for when it begins to ends, and that's it. It's done, right? And obviously, as a kid, you didn't argue. Sadly, though, at the same time, Torchwood was on. And it was that decision of like, do I choose between Doctor Who or do I choose Torchwood? And then Primeval came out, which is another show, nothing to do with Doctor Who, but it was another show that's on BBC that I really wanted to watch. And it was, okay, Primeval, Doctor Who, Torchwood. And in the end, I always chose Doctor Who because, again, that was the one that I really wanted to watch and knew that I couldn't miss, because when you got to school the next day after Doctor Who, everybody was going to be talking about it, and like I wanted to be involved in that sort of conversation. So I missed out on Torchwood growing up, which is a shame because from everybody that's told me, it is really, really good. And very weird as well. I had one friend, I said I was going to watch Torchwood, and she was like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah. And she was like, you know, it's very different than Doctor Who. Like it's like, it's in the same universe, but it's like made for adults. And I'm like, okay. And then she described some of the episodes to me, and I'm like, Jesus, bloody hell. Like, no way. And then, so I'm excited for that. I'm excited to see how far it goes. Like, if it is what people say of like it is a lot more so for the older audience, that sort of thing. So I'm really, really excited to finally get into it. Like, it's been years, and I'm 27 years old, and I haven't watched Torchwood. Like, I can't really call myself a proper sort of Doctor Who fan if I haven't watched Torchwood. So I'm finally getting around to it, and I'm really, really excited. This review, how it's going to work, I'll break it down, is going to go very much as it does when I review sort of Series 1 and I reviewed Series 2 of Doctor Who with Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant. It's going to run exactly the same. The only difference is with that, I read all the books first, and then I watched the show at the same time. And then I did a big review of the sort of Series 1 or Series 2. This one's a little bit different. So how it's going to be is a fact of I'm going to go off and watch the show, and then I'm going to watch individual episode, and what I'll either do, I haven't decided yet, I'll watch one episode and record my thoughts, or I'll do one big episode where I watch them all, probably twice, just to make sure I get everything, and then I will do the review, and I do it that way. I haven't really decided yet. So there's different ways I'll do it, but you'll find out when it gets to the actual review part. But I'm going to do it per episode. I'm going to break down each episode. I'm going to tell you the things that I liked, that I didn't like, my thoughts on certain characters, my favorite episodes, and things like that. And like if I'm excited for Series 2 and blah, 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 blah. And then after I've done that, I'm going to talk about the books, because basically with Torchwood, the first series came out, and then when the first series ended, 3 books were released, which was book 1, Another Life, book 2, Border Princes, and book 3, Slow Decay. So what my plan is, after I've done this review and it's out there, I'm then going to go off and read the first 3 books and then review them and then put them up, and to see as I do with Doctor Who, really, is to see how the story continues, to see the evolution of the characters. Fingers crossed, I enjoy Torchwood. Otherwise, I might not enjoy the books. We'll see. I have a feeling I will, because I'm a Doctor Who fan, and this was done by Russell T Davies, so I'm sure that I will enjoy it. But yeah, I am just excited. There's not really much to say in this introduction, other than I've got a lot of excitement. So my fingers are crossed, and hopefully it is as good as I want it to be. But we'll see. Time will tell. So without further ado, I'm going to go off now and watch Torchwood finally for the first time. Fingers crossed I do enjoy it. Whether I do or I don't, you are going to find out all my thoughts and feelings in a second. I'll see you in a mo. And welcome back, everybody. So now I have finished watching series 1 of Torchwood. I've watched it all in its entirety, complete. And then I went back and I watched some of my favorite episodes of this series, which I'll talk about more of those ones in depth in a minute. But my overall sort of feelings of series 1 is that it's bloody brilliant. I love it. Honestly, from the get-go, from the first episode, I was enthralled. I was drawn in. Like, I've always been a huge fan of Captain Jack anyway. He's been one of my favorite characters in modern Who. I even have I think they're what they're called now. Let's see if I can remember what they're called now. The Battle in Time cards. I've got a special edition Captain Jack Vortex Manipulator card, and I've also got a regular Captain Jack Resurrected card for him. I've had them for years, since I was young. One of my favorite Doctor Who novels is highly involves Captain Jack. It's called Only Human. It's the 9th Doctor adventure. Long and short of it, really, is the fact of somehow a caveman finds his way in modern times London, and the Doctor leaves Captain Jack to look after this caveman, and he takes him on the pull, he takes him on the lash, and it's just hilarious, right? To have a caveman breakdancing in a nightclub. It's absolutely incredible. So I've always been a huge fan of Captain Jack. So I knew going into this series that I would love it, but I didn't realize how much I would enjoy it. And one thing that I like I said in the introduction, one thing that I knew going in, that this is very much going to be adult. It's very much going to be weird and different from what I'm used to with Doctor Who. But nobody told me how horny this show is and how horny the characters are. Like everybody just wants to fuck each other. And every episode is basically just sex, sex, sex. And how gay the show is as well. And that's wonderful. The representation of having bisexual characters and characters that are fully gay. And it's just overly so fantastic that it's one of those where I'm sitting there with this show and I'm thinking, this show was made around 2007, 2008. It's brilliant. The characters are fantastic. The stories are interesting. They're engaging. Like, this is very much, in a way, a show of, like, imagine if you was a Doctor Who fan, you grew up with Doctor Who, and then you were looking for something that was a bit more sort of what you wanted, so a bit more sort of grown up. This is what Torchwood is, in my opinion. It's taking the Doctor Who universe. Basically, the best way I could explain it to my mom and to friends was that, think of the X-Files, but a lot more adult, a lot more gruesome, a lot more sex, and that's basically Torchwood, and set in Wales, in Cardiff. And I am a sucker for the Welsh accent. I absolutely love it. But this show, it just blew my mind of like how good this show is compared to a lot of the shows that we get nowadays are not very, not great. I don't watch modern TV anymore, but to be honest, I'm kind of glad that I missed it when it came out, because I don't think I would have been able to appreciate it when I was younger. So watching it now, being older and being more sort of traveled and know the way of the world and stuff like that, I feel like I can watch this show and really appreciate it for what it's trying to do in terms of the characters, in terms of the themes, and in terms of being a more older and more mature, like I said, Doctor Who fan. I grew up with Doctor Who, watching the revival, and now I'm watching the adult side of Doctor Who, the I don't know how to explain it really, just kind of the next generation of Doctor Who, of this universe in Torchwood. And I bloody loved it. And I thought it was fantastic. All the cast is really good. Gwen, she is a powerhouse. She is female empowerment in the body. Captain Jack, again, love Captain Jack. Yanto, like he's in the background for a lot of the first few episodes, but he comes into his own as the series goes on. Owen, he's a horn dog, but he's also pretty brilliant, and he's brave and courageous, even if he can't keep his hands off women. And Toshiko, again, absolutely lovely, wonderful, smart, clever, just beautiful and wonderful. Like, all the characters are so well done, but they're all human. They've all got flaws. Each one of the characters are like, they're not like, when you watch a show, everybody's perfect. Nobody's got flaws. Nobody's got issues. Like, each character is flawed because they're human. They're going to have their flaws. They're going to have their moments of weakness. And that's kind of what this show really explores. Really, not just with the characters, but also with the topics. It's like, not every single like episode is based on a monster or some sort of alien creature. Sometimes it is just down to humans being humans, or it's down to how these alien devices can affect humans to do things and stuff like that. Like, there's even one episode that's completely just Fight Club, but with like a X-Files, Torchwood sort of alien sort of twist. But it's all really, really well done. And that's what I really loved about his show. It's just that it had everything. It had everything that I was looking for and more. It was weird. It was wonderful. Even the horny parts, I thought was pretty good, to be honest. I was willing for them. Like, some of the episodes, you don't really want to watch with your parents in the room, but still, those moments, they pull you in. And the gay representation is wonderful as well. And I really appreciate just to have a show where it didn't care, where this is what we're going to do. These are our characters. They're human, they're flawed, they're real. And we're just going to expand upon that. And I just thought that was wonderful. So, like, my overall thoughts of this show, if you couldn't tell, are overly positive, and I really, really loved it. As for sort of the breakdown of each episode, so we have episode 1. Let me get it up here for you. So episode 1, Effing Changes. Police Constable Gwen Cooper comes across the mysterious organisation known as Torchwood while investigating their world. She finds technology and methods she's never imagined. Now, one thing that gets me, and it's got me with a modern Doctor Who as well, is that when the revival first started with Doctor Who, and even like the classic sort of era of Doctor Who, is the fact of, you had like Unit, and Unit was no one was meant to know about Unit. It was meant to be like an off branch of the government. It's top secret, above classified. No one knows about it. All that jazz. And then the revival comes, it's kind of the same, and then slowly but surely it's got to the point now, especially with like the new series of Doctor Who, where everybody knows who Unit is. Unit's no longer a secret thing. It's like they even have a bloody huge tower in the middle of London that just has their logo on the side of the building. And the reason I bring that up is it was the same with Torchwood. Torchwood was introduced, meant to be a very like above top secret. It's way more than Unit. No one's meant to know about it, right? But now everybody knows about it. Even like the local Cardiff police know who Torchwood are. And it's like the fact of, you're not meant to know. And I'm sitting there thinking, is there no mind wipe or anything like that, where like, oh God, they've seen things they shouldn't do. Let's get the neuralizer out and, give them a blast. Well, in a way, Captain Jack does. I think it's called, is it Redo? Retcon? Retcon, that's what it's called. It's like a drug that you give them, and it gives them like amnesia. They forget things. But even so, like, he's not giving it to everybody, or at least it's not referenced that everybody's being given to. I'm thinking, well, this is meant to be a secret organisation, but everybody knows who Torchwood are, and they just kind of move out the way. But like, Torchwood's here. I'm like, you're not meant to know who they are. But again, that's just me. That's just me sort of nitpicking and being very gripey. But sorry, I just had to put that out there because it was a something that just kept sort of getting to me at the back of my mind. Anyway, so episode 1, sort of mini review. I thought it was pretty good, as an introduction to the characters, to the world, to this idea of what Torchwood is, and getting to know Gwen was really, really good. A lot of fun, and like I said, it's a pretty good introduction. As for episode 2, Day 1, Torchwood must stop a sex-addicted alien as it leaves a trail of gruesome deaths in its wake. This, right, so I quite like this episode, and I'll go into more depth of my favourite ones a little bit later. I quite like this episode. It's an awkward one, like I said, to watch for your parents because, again, it is just like it's a weird idea to do this for your second episode because it's just pure sex, but it works. And again, I'll explain it in a little bit more detail later. But it's a great episode, and what I love about it is it's day one. You know, it's a proper, true day one. Sort of Gwen doesn't know what she's doing, what's going on, and you get to see that and experience that. And again, I'll go into more detail in that a bit later. Then you got episode 3, Ghost Machine. After Gwen Cooper recovers an alien device from Sean Harris, the device seamlessly takes her back in time to the 1940s, where she sees a young boy alone on a railway platform. Soon after, Owen has a similar experience, only this time he's under a bridge in the early 1960s, where a young woman is raped and murdered. They trace both the boy and the murderer and learn that the boy was well taken care of. As for the murderer, the case remains unsolved. Something that is something that outrages Owen. Again, this episode is really, really good. Like, I'll admit, I think all the episodes are pretty good. I enjoyed every single one of them. And even the episodes I don't think that were very strong, I still had a lot of fun. And that's the main thing, is the fact of I could still sit there and go, I'd happily watch any of these episodes in random and still have a good time. And Ghost Machine was one of those ones where it was just like you watch it and it's like, okay, so I understand the idea of what Torchwood is. Torchwood is not just about, aliens and X-Files. Like, some of it is just the fact of, like alien tech, that the reason why it shouldn't be allowed into the public space is because it can lead people to what happens in this story of, like, you get too hooked on that device, on that, or what it gives you, on the power that it gives you, and it can lead you down a dark path, as it does with some of the characters in this story, which again I won't get into for spoilers, but where it goes and where it leads, it's brilliant. It's so good. Then we had this is another weird one. And I couldn't have not giggle, but at the same stage, it's actually pretty good. If it's one of those where it's like, if you look at it on the surface, you'll be like, oh, that seems a bit odd. But if you look under the skin, it's a lot deeper than you think. So you got episode 4, Cyberwoman. There's a dark secret in the basement of the hub. Even Jack is unaware of it, but Yanto knows, and he'll go to any lengths, sacrifice anything and anyone to protect what's down there. So again, this is the one with the Cyberwoman where she's like well, basically, she's in a Cyberman bikini. Best way to explain it for the whole thing. It is a lot deeper than that. There is, like, I've always found the Cybermen to be very scary. To me, the Cybermen have always scared me more than Daleks, because just the idea of what Cybermen are and the whole point of removing human emotion, removing what it is to be alive, because what happens when you get converted, it hurts. So they take the emotions away, so you don't have to feel cold, you don't have to feel sad, you don't know what's happened to you. You're just a lifeless husk, really. And I love how it links in with Doctor Who. This, where it's like Yanto and his girlfriend. Well, I don't want to go into it for spoilers, but basically it links into the final episode of Doctor Who Series 2, which I really, really liked. That I liked how they were doing the flashbacks and that, which I thought was pretty good. Especially, again, the whole point is that you'd watch Doctor Who, then you'd watch this, so you would get the references there and then. And I really appreciate them for doing that. Then you had the next episode. This one was another weird one, but again, really powerful. So it was called Small Worlds. So Jasmine is a withdrawn but intelligent child whose new friends exploit her suppressed anger. And while investigating this, Jack encounters elemental enemies from his past that are determined to harm those close to them. This one feels a lot like a Sarah Jane Adventures. Like, it's still got the Torchwood-esque to it. It's still got some very adult themes into it. But at the same stage, this felt like a terrifying villain. Like, one of the things I love about Sarah Jane Adventures, and what I quite enjoy about this series, is the fact of the monsters in Sarah Jane and the monsters in this one are a lot more terrifying than the mainline Doctor Who series. I always found, anyway. And I find this idea of these creatures very terrifying. The idea that you can't stop them, you can't control them. Like once they've targeted you, once they've picked you out, that's it. You can't run. There's nowhere you can go. They will get you and they will torture you for fun, and then you're dead. And there's twists and there's turns, and the ending is brutal and difficult, but so well done, so well written. So good. And then episode 6, I love this episode. This is another one of my favourites. So in the countryside, north of Cardiff, the Torchwood team investigates the disappearance of 17 people in the last few months. No bodies have been found, and the police haven't a clue as to what may have happened to them. They set up camp in a field, but when their SUV is stolen and is then parked in a small village just a few miles away, they realise they're being lured into a trap. In the village, they find the remains of several inhabitants stripped of their flesh and organs, and one terrified survivor who promptly shoots Gwen with a shotgun. With Yanto and Tosh taken prisoner, they all soon come to realise that people are being hunted. I want to go into loads of details of this one, but I'm saving it for the favourites part. But if you've seen Hills of Eyes, if you've seen Texas Chainsaw, or even if you've watched the movie The Cottage that I reviewed 2 Halloweens ago, you will know this story. But I will save it for when I get to my favourites because it's a brilliant story. Then episode 7, so we've got Greeks bearing gifts. The team is asked to analyse a recently discovered 18th century corpse with a hole in its chest. Meanwhile, a mysterious, charismatic woman seduces Tosh and gives her an alien pendant that allows its wearer to read other people's minds. I really like this one. I like Tosh. I feel like, if I'm being honest, I feel like she's a bit underutilised in some episodes. And this one, she gets this whole episode to herself, and she really gets to come out into her character, really comes out of her shell. You get to learn more about Tosh, that she is a lot more complex and there's a lot more going on to her than what is originally shown. So I really, really like this episode. And the whole idea of being able to read minds, and again, it shows, as I was mentioning in The Ghost Machine, how the reason why Torchwood is keeping these technologies away from humans is not because humans don't deserve anything like that. It's a fact of humans are greedy. Life is greedy, and it's the power that these things give you that will kind of change people, manipulate people, and can cause a lot of harm to themselves or to others, or vice versa. And this is one of those things where Tosh goes for this, and she has this pendant where she can read minds, and she quickly realizes that her world is not what she thought it was. The people are not what she thought it was. And she tries to do good with it because she tries to prove that you can do good with these devices. But the problem is there's always consequences with all the good, like it's yin and yang. With every good action is a negative reaction. Again, really, really well done. Then the next episode was They Keep Killing Susie. Great name, but it makes sense if you've watched the episode. Torchwood is called into a murder investigation when a suburban couple are found in their beds with their throats slit and Torchwood written on the wall in their blood. Gwen convinces them to use the gauntlet to reanimate the victims to see if they can get the identity of the killer. I won't say any more because I've just read the rest of it and it will ruin it. So I won't go into extra detail about that one, but that's another really good one. There's a lot of twists and turns in it. And that one I'd say keeps you on your toes for the twists and turns, because it's very much the fact that you've got to pay attention to notice it. And again, you'd have to kind of pay attention to a lot of the earlier episodes as well, because there's a lot of references to earlier episodes in that one. But I don't want to really go into detail with that one because I don't want to spoil it because it's pretty good. And then you get my next one, which is another one of my favourites. If you've listened to my review of Series 2 of Doctor Who, you will know that I am a defender of Love and Monsters. I actually think it's pretty good. And from rewatching it over the years, it gets better and better each time I watch it. Torchwood has their own Love and Monsters episode, and it's here in episode 9 with Random Shoes. So the invisible spirit of a hit and run victim tries to convince Gwen to locate the alien who might have been responsible for his death. So if you've watched Love and Monsters, again, I don't want to go into full details, but if you watch Love and Monsters, you know that basically has nothing to do with Doctor Who. Like, it's in the Doctor Who universe and the Doctor and Rose are there, but really it's to do with Elton and his story, right? Same thing here with this story. You've got the main character and he, and it's basically him telling the story. As he remembers things, he's telling the story of what happened to him, his life It's really well done. Again, I don't want to go into detail because it's great, but yeah. Then we have so we've got Out of Time, which is again another favourite of mine. So when a passenger plane from 1953 arrives in Cardiff in 2007 due to the rift, the Torchwood team try to help free temporal immigrants adapt to a new life in the city. Again, don't want to go into full details about this one because I want to talk about it in favourites, but I love this really fish out of water sort of story, and this is kind of what I want from Torchwood, or what I was hoping to see from Torchwood. Stories like this, being like, what do you do when you have moments of like, it's not an alien ship, it's not a device, it's not a beast or creature or supernatural whatever MacGuffin. It's people from a different timeline. How does that affect the crew? How does that affect them? How does that change? It's so heartbreaking, but so well done. Like, oh, so good. And then the next episode, Combat. This is probably the only episode I would say that where I'd happily watch it again because it's a good episode, but it's one of those where it was like, it's a very confusing episode to have. When the next two episodes are kind of wrap everything up, it feels like it's very good for one character, Owen. But apart from that, it's still very much one of those where it was like, okay, it's a bit odd to have this in. It's kind of like when you have Love and Monsters and Fear Her. It's like, okay, you've got all these great episodes leading up to it. You've got two weird episodes, and then you have the climax really. But either way, Combat, the team discovers a ring who are kidnapping weevils. Weevils are like creatures that live in the sewer, and they're very dangerous, and Torchwood keeps an eye on them. But they basically live in the sewer. They don't leave the sewer unless by accident. Anyway, so wild alien creatures that have come through the rift and are hiding on Earth, which leads Owen down a dark path to confront the future of his own existence. This is a good episode if you're an Owen fan, and from the events that happens in the last episode, Out of Time, it makes sense that why this episode is here, because it's a way for Owen to have an outlet. And I'd say from this point on, from Out of Time to this and leading on, you see a very different side of Owen. And again, I'm a big fan of Owen, so I appreciate it for that. But same stage, it was like, oh, it's a bit odd, sort of. So it's not bad. It's just the fact of it's not one of my favorites. But overall, it's still a good sort of story. And then episode 13, it is Captain Jack Harkness. So Jack and Tosh investigate what there are reports of music coming out of nowhere in an abandoned dance hall. While in the building, a temporal rift sends them back in time to 1941. But they soon realise they can't get back to their own time, at least not without Tosh sending those in the present day the necessary equations to make it happen. While at the dance hall, Jack runs into someone he knows. And I won't say any more until we talk about it in favourites. And then finally, last episode, the one that ends it all off is episode 13, End of Days. The rift is splintering. Strange phenomena like UFOs and ancient soldiers are falling through time into various places around the world. These events resemble those in the shadows and bring about the end of days. Right, so that is my thoughts on the 13 episodes. As for sort of getting in deep in some of my sort of favorite episodes, so starting off with episode 2, day 1, I love this episode. Main reason being is that it does something that you don't really see in a lot of TV shows, and it kind of does my head in a little bit. And what I mean by that is the fact of, imagine a scenario where a series has just started, episode 1, a character gets introduced, and they're a newbie, they're a rookie, they don't know what they're doing, they're still learning the ropes. And again, everything that you'd expect in episode 1. And then episode 2, somehow magically, they know what they're doing, they know who everybody is, they know everybody's name, they know where the coffee is in the cupboard, they know where they keep the creamer, blah, 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 blah. They just know things they shouldn't know. And what I love about this episode is that it really is day 1. Gwen is completely oblivious. She's still questioning Torchwood. She's saying like Torchwood shouldn't have access to this technology. They shouldn't have access to this. You can't just do this. You can't just do that. And it really kind of changes the dynamic. And you realize with Torchwood is the fact of, these people, that they live in this world with us, but they're not a part of it. They're attached from this world. They don't leave really the base apart from going home and then come back. They're in this weird bubble. And Gwen tries to teach them, basically, this is how we do investigations nowadays. This is how you are be human. This is how you understand people's feelings. And again, there are people. These are not just bodies. These are not just like, oh, this is one person dead. Oh, that's a shame. Either way, okay, move on to the next one. It's like, no, they're actually people. You've got to care about them. And you get to know Gwen a lot more, and you care a lot more about it, and you get to know the team very, very slowly. Of course, again, you do have the sex part of it as well, where you've got the giant cloud that basically went into this young lady's body, and this best way to explain it is just to be honest. It is a cloud that feeds off orgasms, and she forces herself on men, and that when the men come and ejaculate and ecstasy, she sucks the life essence, the force, and all that's left of them is ash. And yeah, it's I can't explain it any more than that, because that's basically what happens. If you can get over that, again, it's a very weird idea. Why would you do that for the second episode? I don't know. But as a sort of a day one, as a getting to know Gwen, it works brilliantly. And you do feel sorry for the girl as well. You realize that this girl, she didn't want this. Like she's not evil. It's just the fact that the creature inside her won't let her go, and she has to keep feeding on this energy. And if she doesn't, she and the creature will implode. They would just explode. And you get a really heartfelt moment at the end with this woman and this creature and Gwen and Jack as well. And you learn a bit more about Jack. And obviously, what you've got to realize with this show is the fact of only Gwen knows, because of the events at the end of episode 1, that Jack can't die, that Jack's immortal. And the rest of the team don't really know. And as the series goes on, they start to get more hints and start to realize that Jack is a man out of time, that Jack isn't he doesn't exist in our timeline because he wasn't born at this time frame, and he's immortal, but you don't know how he's immortal, things like that. Like, it's really, really well done. And it's if you're a Doctor Who fan, you know what happened to Captain Jack, but it's slowly dripped of like what happened to him, why. And because I kept asking myself a question after episode 1, I'm sitting there thinking, well, hold on a second. When we last saw Jack, he was in like the 23rd, 24th century, on the Satellite 1 with the Daleks, and then all of a sudden he is now in modern England, modern times. Like, how did he get there? And the show doesn't really answer it. Like, you get hints here and there, especially near to the end of the series. You get a few hints of like, Captain Jack says he was saved, and then he found himself here, and now he's kind of got a job to do. Still don't know, but again, I love sort of that drip feeding from starting here with this episode of like, they start to learn more that Jack is more than just what meets the eye, to quote Transformers. So that's that one. Then I loved this episode 6, Countryside. I am a big fan of like Leatherface and Hills of Eyes and and the movie The Cottage. That's one of my favorite sort of B movie horrors that I'm really glad people are now starting to check out, by the way. It's brilliant. But I love this episode because it shows the real true essence that Scooby-Doo has been telling us all our lives, is the fact of the real villains, the real monsters are humans, are people. It's what humans can do to other people is the true essence of evil, to be honest, on this planet. And that is what this story is. It's a story of twists, and it's a story of turns, and you think it's monsters, and you think it's supernatural, you think it's like weevils or some demonic creatures or whatever. And again, I'm going to spoil it, and I do apologize, but you find out that it's not. That the only real villain here, the only real true evil, is humans. And it's very much like cannibals, and the twist in it. Like, I don't really I want to say it because it's a brilliant line and it's so well done. And it's one of those that when I first heard this line at the very end, it got me sitting there going, I was just in awe. I was just in silence. But basically, I don't know. Yeah, I'm just gonna say it, and I do apologize for spoiling it, but it's just too good not to say. Basically, at the end, Gwen sits down with the cannibal, and he basically says, "Look, why? I need to know why. It makes no sense why you do this. Why is this a thing that you have to do? There's not just you, but the whole village. Why do you have to eat people?" And he goes, and he basically goes, "Like, you want to know? Let me whisper it to you." And it's done brilliantly, by the way. The actor that does this is top notch. He gets really up close to her and whispers into her ear, "Because it makes me happy." And it's just that the line delivery, and it's the way he says it. You just sit there and you just like, there's no real answer. There's no real point. He just does it because he wants to do it. And I would say that's more evil than actually being a cannibal. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's a brilliant episode. And I was also sitting there again. I've read a lot of books as well, and I do know the fact of I could notice the acting beats, because if you, again, it's going to sound weird. Don't ask me how I know this. I read a lot of books. If you consume human meat, if you're human and you consume human meat, sorry, you will start getting shakes. You will start it messes with your brain chemistry, basically. And there is a name for it. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But basically, you will start getting the shakes. You will start basically rattling. You won't be able to sit still, and it will basically. I think it will kill you in the end. But yeah, I could see in the mannerisms of all the characters, they all looked a bit tetchy, they all looked a bit on edge, they all looked a bit mad and wild, because it does send you crazy. But the act, like, they were twitching a bit, they were shaking, and again, that's because of all the human meat that they were eating was sending them like that. So again, it's those little details that if you know what to look for, and if you know this sort of stuff, you notice it. And of course, I did, because I'm weird and I read too many books. But I thought it was a brilliant episode, and it was one when I watched it again, I noticed all those little details. The first time round, I was just in shock. The second time round, I was still in shock, but I was paying attention, and I thought it was this great. And then episode 9, Random Shoes. I love this one, like I said, because it reminded me of Love and Monsters. It's a story about Eugene, how he is a screw up, basically. Like, in his mind, he screwed up his whole life, but it's okay because he has a alien's eye, and that he believes that at any moment, doesn't matter what goes on in his life, it will all be okay because the alien will come back for the eye and will take him away, and his life will be better. And it's a human story. It's a story about Eugene and his life, and you learn more about him as he goes through the emotions of. Because again, I've skipped ahead a bit, but like, he gets hit by a car. So it starts off, he's hit by a car, and he's a ghost, he's a spirit. Gwen and the rest of the team can't see him. They don't. He's not really there, but he tags along with them, and as he goes through the story, you realize that he's been there at other cases, and he's been there trying to talk to Gwen, trying to talk to team, trying to get their attention, be like, look, I have alien tech, or I have artifacts that I want you to look at because I think you'd be interested in them. And then as you go through the story, you realize, you kind of feel sorry for Eugene as well, that he's just he's just a bloke. He's just trying to, I don't know. He's the best way to explain it. He's just trying to be the best he can possibly be, because his dad left at a young age because he messed up, and he wants to prove that he's not a fuck up, basically. And his brother's a dick to him. His mum's probably the only one that really cares. His best mate at work basically says he cares, but is still happy to use him. And then his mate at the video store, at the video rental store, is a complete asshole. And it's just one of those where, like, as he starts to realize this, he's like, look, my life wasn't what I thought it was, but it's okay now because I've got Gwen. He has a love of infatuation with Gwen, and I won't spoil the ending because it's a very lovely ending. But at the end, he kind of gets his moment of redemption, his moment to really be the person he wished he could have been when he was alive. And it's also a story about enjoying life, enjoying every single day, of not waiting for your alien to come, not waiting for something to happen or life to come your way and change. You've got to go out and find the change. You've got to go out and live life and live and experience the day. Carpe diem, seize the day. You've got to get out of bed and go forth and prosper. Nothing's going to come to you. No one's going to come to you. You've got to go get it. And it's a wonderful story. And again, because Love and Monsters is one of my sort of sort of guilty pleasures. I loved that they had their own sort of love and monster story here, and it fits in really well with the Torchwood story, with the idea behind Torchwood. And you don't just get Eugene in this, but you get a lot of Gwen as well. And I love Gwen. I think she's a brilliant character. And just have how she's trying to be a copper. She's still part of Torchwood, but she's being a copper. She's going to proper grassroots of talking to everybody, interviewing everybody, and everybody that she meets points her to another person. So she goes to this next person. And then, you can see some people actually did care about Eugene, and then some people didn't. And then you can have Eugene in the back being like, "Oh, I thought you were my mate." And it's really well done. It's a really, really well done episode. And again, if you love and monsters, or at least if you can appreciate that, I think you'd appreciate this one as well. As for episode 10, Out of Time, as I mentioned, this is kind of what I wanted from Torchwood. This idea of, well, what do you do when the sort of anomaly, the thing that you've detected isn't a device, or isn't an alien, or isn't something otherworldly? It is just humans that have been misplaced. It's time immigrants. People from the 1950s have gone through the rift. To them, it's only been like 10, 15 minutes in the air, but really it's been like 40 to 60 or so years later since they disappeared. And it's them having to adapt to this new world. You've got the young 18-year-old girl who is, very sort of, I was going to say the word old-fashioned. Old-fashioned for us, yes, but back in her day, it was just standard. But very much the fact of her mother told her that she couldn't talk to boys, how that boys aren't interested in soiled goods, and all these old-fashioned sort of ideas and concepts of how a lady should be and how a lady should act and all that. And then you have like Diane. She is the pilot that flew them there. She's very much like a millionaire heart, full of moxie, but she's sort of like, I just want to fly. It's all I want to do is fly. But there's so many rules and regulations, and you can't smoke here, and you can't do that. In fact, I just want to fly. I don't want to have to get a license. I had a license. It might be out of date, but I know how to fly and all that. And then the hardest sort of story is with the bloke. I can't remember his name off the top of my head now, but there's this bloke who was a shop owner. This is the most heart-wrenching. I cried because it's so brutal. He was a shop owner, and he was just flying back to, I think, to his family, and he ends up finding himself like in modern times in 2007, and he's like, well, my son, Alan, like he was like only 7 years old when I left, so he's still got to be a lot around. There's potential he's got kids, so he's asking Jack to hunt him down. At the same time, him and Jack have a bond together because they're both men out of time. They're both trying to understand each other. Like Jack's finally found somebody he can have a heart to heart with, somebody who can properly understand what it's like to not be from a timeline where you are, but being stuck there that you can't leave. And eventually they find this man's son. I think he's like in his 70s, but he's got dementia, so he can't remember anything. So he goes to see him, pretending to be like his second uncle, cousin, twice removed sort of thing, in the care home. And it's so heartbreaking because if you've ever talked to anybody with dementia, or anybody who's dealing with a sort of memory loss sort of condition, it's really heartbreaking, to be honest. And there were moments when he feels like he's breaking through to Alan, where like he's telling him about like the football score, and how like when he was younger he used to get up and really sort of pump his fists and say this is what I used to be, and then he remembers, and then he asks another question, and he's getting really teary-eyed, and he's like, Alan, it's me, it's your dad. And he's like, who are you? I don't remind you. It's so heartbreaking. And the actor, the bloke, he's really going for it. Like he's full of tears, and it's so heartfelt. And then there's this moment where it's like, Mum, and the carer is like, I'm not your mum. And he's like, when's Dad coming home? And he's like, I'm here, son. I'm here. And it's just like, oh God. I watching it back a second time, I'm like, oh God, this is difficult. And then what it goes through with his story as well, how the young girl, she's basically like, look, I'm young, all my family have died, all my friends have died, I want to go live a new life. And she goes to live in London. Diane, she she has a relationship with Owen, and like this is kind of as what I mentioned, where she has like this sort of friends with benefits relationship with Owen, and Owen really properly falls in love with her. Bless him, and I don't blame him because she's gorgeous, but really falls in love with her, and she's like, "Look, I don't belong here. The weather conditions are the same. I can't adapt to life here. I want to fly." So she gets in a plane and she leaves Owen, and she goes through the rift again to wherever it takes her, and obviously that leads Owen to being very sort of upset, brooding, depressed, going into sort of the next episode, combat. But then you've got the bloke as well, when he's realised where like Alan, his son, never had any kids, so he's got no grandkids, he's got no family. Like his line began and ended with Alan, and that was it. There's no more of his family line. There's his shop that he owned is no longer there, and again, he decides to commit suicide, and Jack tries to convince him like, no, don't do it, there's so much to live for, don't do it. And because like again, Jack's died many times, and he's like, look, I died once and it's nothing, it's darkness, it's black, there's nothing. Live life today, experience it. You can have a new life, you can start a new shop, you can start again, you can meet somebody. And the man's just like, I did that. I had a wife, I had a kid, I had a shop, I had everything I wanted, and now it's gone, and I don't want to do it again. And Jack basically is like, look, we can try. And the guy's like, look, we'll wait till tomorrow, and we'll go for a drink, and we'll have a laugh, and we'll talk. But as soon as your back's turned, I'll do it again, and next time I'll make sure I do it properly. And so Jack realizes he can't save him, and so obviously Jack can't die. He sits with him as the man sort of ends his life. And it's a heartbreaking, beautiful, tragic scene. But this episode is possibly my favorite. This whole series, it's the one I'd happily come back to all the time. Of just like, look, this is great. And I just sat and wished of like, I just wish TV shows would do episodes like this, where it really goes very much to form of what the series or what the show is about, but completely goes left field. And he's not scared or not afraid to do these harder topics, to do these harder moments, to really, because they could have done it easy, like, oh, fish out of water, man out of time, had a laugh and a joke with it, as they do at the beginning, really. And then they could have carried that on and say, oh, you know what, we'll adapt here, we're fine. And then they go off and it ends. But they don't. They start it off being very happy out of the fish, sort of like, oh, you know, we'll take you to Asda's. And, oh, you can buy, we just got our rations on 53. Oh, well, it's all right. You have as much chocolate as you want. I'll give you a limit of like a £20 limit. It's like, oh, you know, I never got that much in my life. Well, you know, things are a lot more cheaper and a lot more available nowadays. Or like they go through all that, and it's really, really well done. But then there's that moment where like the tone changes, and all the characters realize that life isn't what they can't adapt to it, and it's really, really well done. It's the best episode, in my opinion. It's the best episode of series one. It's my favorite. And then finally, the last one that I want to talk about, again, this one has a lot of spoilers in it, is Captain Jack Harkness, episode 12. This is just like Out of Time, where you get Jack and Tosh. They go to a abandoned sort of ballroom, and they hear music. And as they hear music, they find themselves basically in a time loop. Really, they find themselves in a moment in 1940s London Blitz, Cardiff Blitz. Sorry, not London Blitz. But it's kind of like the Blitz, but you know, obviously not in London. And they're stuck there. They're stuck in time. And Gwen, what's his name now? Owen and Yanto are trying to figure out how to get them out, to save them, how to bring them back. And again, I don't really want to spoil this one. I don't really want to go into major spoilers, because again, this one's got some brilliant twists and turns in it. Especially like it links into Doctor Who. It links into Captain Jack as to why he chose the name Captain Jack. Like we have hints of it in Doctor Who, but we actually find out we actually meet the person who he took the name from, and what effects that has. And it's a really heartbreaking one, because Jack, you realize why Jack took the name, but not only why he took the name, but also the fact of what Jack has been trying to say the whole time is like he's a man out of time. How like he would happily stay here in the 1940s, and as he gets to know um, the real Jack, it's really heartbreaking because he falls in love with him, and the man falls in love with him, and it's one of those where it's like he wants. It's so tragic for Jack knowing that he falls in love with a man that he can't have, and he can't stop the man that he loves from dying because he has to die in order for Jack to take his name and to carry on his legacy. But also the fact of he can't change the timeline. He has to let the man of his dreams, the man he loves, die for things to go as if they're meant to go. And it's so heartbreaking. And there's a beautiful moment at the end where they have a dance and a kiss, and it's lovely. So well done. But I don't really want to go into full details about it because again, I feel like I've already spoiled the big parts of it. But there are a lot of twists and turns in the episode, and it links in well with End of Days. I'm not a big fan of End of Days. It's not bad. Like it's just the fact of it just felt a bit rushed. It kind of felt like, oh, big bad thing, and then now it's over. But I did like the end of End of Days. How it basically at the end of it, it's there's a hand basically. There's a hand in if you know Doctor Who, you know what this hand is. If you don't know, then I'd recommend watching sort of series 2. But in series 2, at the beginning in the Christmas special, the Doctor is fighting, and he gets his arm chopped off by the Sycorax, and the hand falls on the floor, disappeared, lost, and gone. Then you watch Torchwood, and there's a hand in the jar, and I know what that is. I do, of course I do, because I'm a Doctor Who fan. But then it's finally sort of answered why Jack is so sort of precious about this hand, and even says like in episode 2, like you please don't break the hand. It's worthless to anybody but me. At the very end of that episode, you basically get a moment where you hear the TARDIS. Basically, you hear the TARDIS chimes, and the hand starts to bubble and move, and he knows the Doctor. And he keeps mentioning like, I'm looking for a Doctor. I'm looking for Pacific Doctor. It's never really said the Doctor, but he's on about the Doctor. And at the end, then he kind of gets it. Then he finds it. And he disappears, and that links into obviously with the end of series 3 of Doctor Who, because obviously when this show's happening, series 3 is taking place at the same time. Even though this came out before series 3, it obviously links in like that. So timeline wise, while this is taking place, series 3 is taking place with the Doctor and Martha. But yeah, those are my favorite episodes. I really, really love them. One thing I wanted to note as well, before we kind of get into sort of like Easter eggs and references and sort of my overall thoughts. One thing that I don't believe, and there's a reason behind it, and I was talking to Nicole from Doom Generation, and I was talking to a couple of people on the Doom Generation Discord, which again, brilliant Discord. I absolutely love those guys there. We were talking about Torchwood, and I said to him, I said, look, one thing that I don't believe, and it's the one thing that not bothered me, but was just the fact of it just seemed really not believable, was the fact of in sort of the episode Cyberwoman, it is sort of established that Yanto, his girlfriend, Lisa, she was in the middle of being converted into a Cyberman. But because the Doctor was doing what he was doing, that the process wasn't finalized, and that he was able to save her, and that he has been sort of secretly keeping her in the basement of Torchwood, but he's been slowly starting to not build her, but like build her a chair and that sort of thing, so that they can reverse the process. The issue being is the fact of once the Cyberman sort of process has been started, there is no going back. There's only forwards. You can only keep upgrading. That's the whole point of Cyberman. You can't downgrade. You can just keep upgrading. And I don't really want to spoil it, but basically what happens at the end of the episode is that something happens, and he hates everybody. He has a fair reason to really dislike and hate everybody. Too much. I'd even go as far as to say that he not only realizes that he should have told them all, but also the fact of he also has that moment of like, I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to leave. If you wanted to leave at that point, I would really understand. I think that the whole team would as well. But he stays, right? But he has a really fair reason to really hate Captain Jack, right? And then 2 hours, not sorry, 2 hours. Then about 2 episodes later, thereabouts, he's flirting with Jack, you know, and they become fuck buddies. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't believe that. I do not believe that Yanto would have feelings for Captain Jack after what happens and what Jack does and all that, you know, in that episode, Cyberwoman. I wouldn't believe that he would have any sort of relationship or any love or care for Captain Jack at all, or any loyalty, really. He'd have to build that back up, and especially have to build that trust back up. But no, apparently they're happily, you know, doing it, which is fine, but I just didn't believe it. And the reason I mentioned sort of the Doom Generation that is because I was talking to them, and they introduced me to a phrase called hate fucking, which I've never heard before. But it's basically the fact of you really like somebody that you really hate, but you can't help that you're both sexually attracted to each other. So it's kind of the fact of you don't love each other, it's just sex, you know. And again, I don't think it's that, but I found it funny when I read it. I was like, oh, you know, possibly, you know, that it could be that. But yeah, like it is as the episodes go on and as the series sort of comes to an end, it's kind of embellished a lot more that Yanto does have feelings and they are sort of sleeping with each other. It's never fully said, but you know, it's hinted at, and Obi makes a few cracks here and there. But that was the only thing that really bothered me, is the fact that I just didn't believe it. I wouldn't believe that Yanto, I think that happened in Cyberwoman, where he would have a relationship with Captain Jack, or have a relationship with any of them, really. And like I said, I'm surprised he stayed. So it's not an issue. And it's not a problem that will bother me or probably would bother anybody. It was just one of those where I was like, I just didn't believe it. I didn't believe that they were a couple, that relationship. And you would have had, not an episode, but there had to been a few more sort of hints and things like that where I'm like, oh, I would believe that. Whereas like, for example, Tosh, she has feelings for Owen, and it's pretty evident from day one, from the very get-go, that she has feelings for him, that Owen is completely oblivious to it. He doesn't see Tosh in that way at all, but she does. She really likes him. She really cares for him, because again, it really hurts her when Gwen and Owen start to fuck as well, and it really bothers her. But at the same stage, you know, she's professional, so she doesn't like to get in the way. But that was evident. That's obvious that they like each other. Tosh likes Owen. But when it comes to Yanto and Jack, I didn't see it, and I still kind of don't believe it. But it is what it is, and I'm sure when we get to series 2, it'll be a lot more evident, and that's completely fine. Especially at like the end of like Captain Jack Harkness, that episode as well, where like it's kind of very much like Rogue, with the newer episode with Doctor Who, when the Doctor meets Rogue and falls in love and has a kiss. It's very much kind of the same as that. After that, I wouldn't believe that Jack would be interested in having a relationship with anybody. To be honest, because again, how much of a connection he had to that character, to that person. But again, I don't know. We'll see in sort of series 2 if it's more evident and a lot more clearer. Either way, I'm not against it. I just didn't believe it. One other thing I wanted to mention was that I was on the lookout. So while I was watching this, I was on the lookout in the background for sort of Easter eggs and things like that. And there were some, but they weren't really big sort of ones to mention. It wasn't until I got to the episode Captain Jack Harkness, because again, it always comes back to this episode. But there are references to series 3 of Doctor Who. Now, like I said, this series came out first, and then when this series ended, a couple months later, series 3 of Doctor Who started. So you wouldn't notice them originally when you saw this. This is something that you'd notice later on. But there are posters everywhere that says Vote Saxon, which again, if you know your Doctor Who lore, Vote Saxon was the master playing, I think Harold Saxon, I think his name was, as he was running for Prime Minister of Britain. And again, you wouldn't have known that reference. So knowing what I know in hindsight being what it is, being like, oh my God, Vote Saxon, they were already started to plant the Easter eggs there and then. And there's also Bad Wolf done in graffiti. It's a quick shot. Like unless you're paying attention, you'll miss it. But in the background, there's a Bad Wolf graffiti in the back in this building. And it's one of those where I noticed, I was like, oh, look, Bad Wolf, that, you know, that's how I like that something bad's going to happen, but also links to like Captain Jack and Rose brought Captain Jack back, and the whole idea of Bad Wolf. And Jax even says himself in this episode, I don't know why this person saved me. I'm still trying to figure it out. Again, Bad Wolf, Rose, Jack being immortal, vote Saxon, and eventually we get the whole sort of Rose comes back with Donna and all this. So I'm excited. I can see they're laying the groundwork. It's a mighty fine road that they're paving right now, and I'm glad that I'm on this journey. But I love these little Easter eggs, like the Vote Saxon poster and the sort of the Bad Wolf graffiti, which again, it's never hinted at, it's never mentioned, it's never like really zoomed in. It's quick as like it's one of those where it's in like a few frames, and if you look away from the screen, you would miss it because where the characters are standing, they're standing in front of it, and it's just when they move where you get to see the Bad Wolf. But yeah, I just wanted to mention it because when I noticed, I was like, oh, good. And then I watched the episode back a second time, and I was like, I noticed parts and things that it was trying to what it's hinting at moving forwards. As for sort of my thoughts going into sort of series 3 of Doctor Who, I'm really excited. I'm a lot more ready and excited for it because I've mentioned it before. I won't go into full details because again, this is to do with Torchwood. It's not overly to do with Doctor Who. But I haven't watched many episodes of the third series. I actually don't remember the third series that as much as I do as the first and second series of Doctor Who. So I'm looking forward to that, and also seeing where it takes me. But most of all, my excitement is the fact of where this episode ends, where you have Captain Jack waiting all this time for the Doctor to finally return, and then to hear the noise and to just come running. And again, I remember the episode where Captain Jack is found running madly and finds a Doctor, and they have their sort of little bromance, which is wonderful. And it's one of those where I'm really looking forward to that moment, to being able to experience this show, and then to see a more evolved and changed Captain Jack, and to see then how that Captain Jack interlays and reacts to a new Doctor with David Tennant. So that's going to be wonderful to see as well, because it feels a bit odd because this Captain Jack is again, because the themes of the show, because this show is a lot more grown up and is a lot more adult, and you see it, you experience a lot different side of Jack in this series. It will be interesting to see if they keep that tone with that character. If that character, if like they don't try to like I don't know, Disney-fy sort of like I'm trying to think of a word. Like I can't think of the word, but basically they change him for going into that. So it'd be interesting to see if it is the same Jack or if it is kind of just a lot more sort of light-hearted Jack. So that'll be interesting to see as well. But I'll be honest with you, it's going to sound bad because again, I am looking forward to watching series 3 Doctor, but I really can't wait to start series 2 Torchwood. I was really tempted to jump onto series 2 and to watch episode 1 because it has one of my favorite actors in it. It is the bloke that plays Spike from Buffy. He's in the first episode, and I saw it in the thumbnail. I was like, oh, I really want to watch it, but I know I can't jump ahead. But so I'm really excited to see where series 2 goes, and then to see where the series goes after that, and how series 2 links into the aftermath of series 3 of Doctor Who, and to see the links. And I'm excited to read the books as well. Like it's got me to this point of where I love these characters, I love this world, I love what's going on, I love the references, I love the ideas and concepts. Like it takes X-Files but makes it more adult, more gory, sets it in Wales, and the characters are Welsh, and it's wonderful. I just want to know where the books go as well. I want to see the misadventures, shall we say, of where these characters go on these adventures in the books. So I'm really excited for that as well. My overall sort of thoughts of Torchwood Series 1 is bloody brilliant. It's fantastic. It is everything that I wanted and more. It's weird. It's wonderful. The horny bits are great. The gay representation is absolutely wonderful as well. It just surprises me that you have a show like this that was done when it was done, but then you don't really see many shows like this anymore. And it's weird. I don't know why. It was like they caught lightning with a bottle with a show like this. And then they never carried it on. I am hoping, I've got my fingers crossed, because Russell T Davies did say now that he's sort of showrunner of Doctor Who now, that he wants to do a lot more spin-off shows. And I don't know if he'll ever bring back Torchwood or he'll ever go back to Torchwood. And if he doesn't, that's fine. But I know he's doing War Between the Land and the Sea. And I'm not saying that is going to be like Torchwood, and I'm not going to go into that and expecting it to be like Torchwood, because I'll be honest, I kind of doubt it will be. But if this is what Russell T Davies wanted to do with a spin-off show, kind of have a show that's still based in the Doctor Who universe, but is completely tonally different, I'm here for it. So it kind of has me excited as well to see what a War Between the Land and the Sea. I'm still very apprehensive. I'm still kind of on the fence because, again, the Sea Devils special with the 13th Doctor really sort of rubbed me the wrong way. I really sort of had a dislike of the Sea Devils after that episode. So I'm still kind of on the fence about it. But this show, Torchwood, has really kind of got me interested in what a sort of spin-off show in the Doctor universe could be, and what the possibilities that they could do. Even if it's still quite light-hearted and still very much like Doctor Who, it's not sort of adult and grown up and full of swears and sex and stuff like that. It doesn't need to be, because I feel like Torchwood, that belongs with Torchwood and that belongs here. It's like lightning in a bottle. You can't sort of capture it twice. But it just got me excited for what's coming next. So I'm really sort of interested in that. Again, the books, I can't wait to get round to reading the books. I've got the first one on Kindle ready to go. I'm currently reading a book that I've got to get through first. But once that one's done, you better believe I'm jumping on to that. And I won't jump into series 3 straight away. I am planning on reading all three, the first 3 books first. And then when those books are done, I'm going to jump into sort of Doctor Who series 3. But I want to stick in this pocket. I want to stay in this feeling that I've got for this show. I want to stick in this pocket, and I want to read the books, and I just want to get lost in this world with these characters. And who knows, the books might be terrible, the books might be great. We will see. All I will say, stick around if you like this sort of breakdown of series 1 of Torchwood. If you like what I'm selling here on this show, then there will be more Torchwood content coming in the next few weeks and months whenever this episode comes out. But yeah, I am really, really excited. It's just left me on a high. It has. And for the last episode to watch was Captain Jack Harkness, and to experience that story again, and to experience all my favorite stories again, and to be able to talk about this show, and to be able to so many people I've been telling. I know I should bend it now because I'm past an hour and 7 minutes, but I just want to mention to everybody that I spoke to about this show, you've all been brilliant. But it's been really lovely just being able to say, look, I'm watching this show, and to have so many people come to me so positively, be like, it's brilliant, it's fantastic, have you seen this episode, have you seen that episode? And just to have that moment, because you don't really get it much anymore. Those really water cooler moments where you sit there and you talk about a show and you get lost in it. You talk about the characters, and you talk about the ideas and the concepts and everything that goes on in a series. It's so rare, and it's been so long since I've actually had a chance to properly do that with a TV show. So it's been absolutely wonderful. So again, thank you to everybody who has sort of put up with me as I've spoken tirelessly about Torchwood at work, or on Discord, or on Twitter and stuff like that. So again, thank you. I just absolutely love this show. It's a new sort of special interest. It's a new obsession, and I am just enthralled with it. But I'm going to wrap things up now. Otherwise, I'll be here all night talking about the same things over and over again. So thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for listening to my thoughts on Torchwood. By all means, again, if you listen to this on Spotify, or if you're listening on YouTube, please drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Are you a Torchwood fan? Have you not watched Torchwood? Are you willing to give it a go now that you've heard me talk about it? Or are you still on the fence? Do you need a little bit more persuasion? Are you waiting for me to talk about the books? All these things and more, please do let me know. All feedback down below. Again, if you're listening on YouTube, again, don't forget to like and subscribe. As of recording this, I'm currently at 298 subscribers. So I'm really close to 300. And also, as of recording this, I'm at 229 followers on Spotify. So if you listen to this and you're not following me on Spotify, and you're not following me on YouTube, then please do, like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz. Follow me on Twitter at howdybeans_pod to see whenever I'm going to be talking about and posting my thoughts on the Torchwood books. and more Doctor Who goodness. So, yeah, I've been your host, Luke, the human. It's been absolutely a grand old pleasure to talk about Torchwood with you today. And I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye bye.